Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the world's best investing podcast. Today, I'm going to explain why I believe that my Palantir position is going to go on to be worth over $100 million. Today, it's worth something like a couple $1,000,000. And the consensus is that, of course, the PE ratio very high, valuation very bad, looking to trim, etc. All these things that make you seem like a reasonable and cerebral person. And then saying something like what I believe, which is that this company is going to go much, much higher, 100 times or even more than that from where it is today, makes you seem like an idiot. And so I was explaining yesterday on X that actually my incentives here are to exhibit the best judgment possible in order to then do stuff with my judgment at scale, right? That's sort of what I enjoy doing, be it my course, be it eventually setting up a fund, etc. So I could just shut up. I'm up 18x on Palantir at the moment, and I could just shut up. I could just say, this is a great company. I think that, maybe I should trim things that people say to get approval from others and sort of stay within the herd, right? I don't believe any of that to be true, in that a bunch of things are happening with this company. I mean, obviously the market is pricing in exponential progress. Fair enough. So the market is aware of some of the things that I'm going to be talking about today. But then generally, I think that long-term and per the backdrop of how AI is evolving, etc., I think that this company is going to far outpace its valuation, and it's going to scale way beyond what people currently imagine. So we're literally at minute zero of the AI revolution. And so what the market is pricing in now is that Palantir is the world's #1 digital twin provider. Everyone needs a digital twin in their company in order to harness all the data and then plug it into AI models. So that is sort of what the market is pricing in today. However, what's happening is that, and I've said this many times, Palantir is exponentiating the rate at which it's productizing its digital twins. Productizing means at the beginning, this software was kind of clunky and required this hefty installation process whereby you had to send people over to your company's premises and get that done, and it was costly, etc. And then as AI is progressing, it's just making it easier and easier to do that. At the beginning, well, really the inflection point that has sent the stock up 18x from the 2022 lows is AIP. AIP via LLMs makes it much easier to deploy and use this software. And then basically right now, what it enables you to do is substitute an entire department of your company with a few lines of code. We'll get back to that, because basically what we have here is a bunch of exponential flywheels that are spinning that, I mean, at the moment, Palantir is really just at minute zero. I think it's going to scale into something much, much more significant. But let me just break down this vision for you. By the way, I have 20 discount coupons available for my course. Link in the show's footnotes for lifetime access, etc. Last time they sold out in 5 minutes. If you want to go get them, do so quickly, because they do fly. Just 20. So yeah, and now we can move on back with Palantir. What drives stock prices over the long term is free cash flow per share. So really what we can ascertain at the moment is that as Palantir continues productizing its digital twin, as Palantir continues productizing its digital twins, free cash flow per share goes up. Okay, as I was saying, we're at the beginning of the AI revolution. Everyone's going to need one of these things. And by the way, I don't think digital twins are going to be confined to organizations. I think eventually individuals are going to have these. Because, for instance, I have so much data flying around the place as an individual, as a retail investor, content creator, etc. I have really no idea of what's happening across my various surfaces, like X, YouTube, Substack, the course, the community, etc. I need to put all of that into one twin of mine, where I know exactly what's happening with each customer at whatever stage of the journey they are with me, my products, services, content, etc. And then I need my AI avatar to get better at basically enhancing outcomes for my customers per dollar spent over time. Right now, the thing with Palantir is, the reason people are scratching their heads with this company is that they see it as a kind of SaaS company. Software as a service, okay, makes you smarter, makes your company a bit more efficient, etc. Actually, what's happening in the economy is that the economy is increasingly running on what I call the Ontology Grid. So we have this kind of grid where we have vertical components and horizontal components of the ontology. We are basically creating a digital twin of everything that's fundamental in the economy, in order to train AI models to do just that. So horizontal components, that would be autonomy and energy. So Tesla's basically creating an ontology for autonomy, and as they put more cars on the road and eventually robots, what they're doing is actually picking up data on how things should move around autonomously in the world. And that would be a horizontal component that everyone in the economy has to use. But then if you think about it, if you want to put humanoid robots in a company and you want them to be useful, they have to have the full context of what's happening across the enterprise. And they need to understand what other robots are doing, what humans are doing, what are the variable conditions like weather, market conditions, etc. So really they need the full context in order to optimize whatever decision they're going to take next, and hence action in order to truly optimize outcomes for the company in question. So all companies do is minimize inputs to obtain maximal outputs for the longest time possible. That's how ultimately they create shareholder value, and do so in the most defensible way possible. So in order for humanoid robots to work, you actually need to plug them into a digital twin. So say you have a fleet of humanoid robots, 100 of them, and they have this perfect capability of navigating three-dimensional space autonomously. Well, if you want to use them in a hospital, or if you want to use them in a manufacturing environment, or you want to use them in defense, or you want to use them in education, etc., then you need the vertical ontologies. That's why it's a grid. So you have the horizontal kind of layer and then the vertical ones, and that's sort of creating grids around businesses in the economy. And actually the grids are tightening in that, say, for example, say you have an education business, as I do with my course. Well, Duolingo is deploying a growing volume of verticals over time. So they started with languages and now they have math, music, chess, etc. So they're picking up data all of the time about really how to enhance outcomes for students over time per dollar spent. And then if you put that vertical ontology into a humanoid robot, once, say, they become really cheap and everyone has 2 or 3, well, then you've fully taken over the education sector and you've basically put everyone on a chokehold on the education system. So the thing with Palantir is it's going to enable customers to create vertical ontologies. And if, as I was saying, this is not just any software company, this is actually the foundation for capitalism 2.0. Because as AI models continue to scale and get better, well, these vertical ontologies are increasingly going to be the main source of value of the economy, right? So actually the most valuable asset that a company will have, and this is already true now, but it will be increasingly true over the next 5 to 10 years, is just the digital twin. So all of the data that your operations generate that you then use to automate AI, which enhances operations, which creates more data, etc. And so simultaneously, what's happening is that, so that's one flywheel, okay? And what's happening is that as that flywheel continues to spin, you have another one, which is the autonomy of organizations. And so, you know, a few hundred years ago, no one had electricity, then people had electricity, and now electricity is just a basic. It's something that we take for granted. It's absolutely necessary just to live and compete in the modern world. With ontologies, it's going to be the same. Because if you go back to AIP, and you guys should absolutely see the videos they have for developers on their YouTube channel, so much alpha. If you know anything about coding, just go and check them out because it's so insightful. You have a lot of people saying, well, no one has an idea how Palantir works, etc. So not true. If you have any kind of technical knowledge, go into this YouTube channel. You're going to love it. So useful. So basically, as I was saying, you can substitute an entire department of your company with a few lines of code on AIP. So say you have a customer service department and you have 5 different markets with 5 different languages. So you could have one line of code in AIP basically translates any customer request from whatever language to English. And then you have another AI agent, which basically solves the customer requests and actually implements actions along the supply chain, etc., to fix them. So say someone would like their package to be to arrive at their place on Thursday night instead of Tuesday morning, they could send that in whatever language they want to your email. Then basically AIP processes that and effects the changes in the supply chain to ultimately fix the customer request at a marginal cost. And you can do that with a few lines of code. Then if you spend more time on the customer service thing with AIP, you can do all these sort of crazy things with more lines of code. And so it's very powerful. And you can do that for any function across the enterprise. Then what happens is that as that system runs, eventually what you have is more and more data on these functions. So then that basically enables the AI models to get more efficient and basically speed up things more, automate things more, etc. So then that's another flywheel for the business. And once you have that flywheel going, Palantir becomes something like electricity. You just can't switch it off. And then for competitors, it becomes increasingly harder to catch up with you if you have a better ontology. So really, the sooner that you deploy the ontology, the sooner that you scale it up, the sooner that you get going with AIP, you kind of get this exponential advantage over competitors, right? So two flywheels that we talked about. And as I was saying, minute zero of the AI revolution. This is just getting started. The models are only starting to scale, etc. Right? Then the third flywheel is that this also applies to Palantir. So Palantir recently started talking about deploying AI FDEs, AI forward deployed engineers. Forward deployed engineers are the guys Palantir sends over to your company's premises, and they do all the bespoke work to make sure that you're actually implementing and using Palantir correctly. So these guys, apparently, they're like actual entrepreneurs within the company, and they go over to your company's headquarters, and they have this, they own the business. So they actually make things work. They make Palantir work for you, your company, and if they do, they get promoted, they get paid, etc. So that's how it works. Now, Palantir is building AI versions of this, which means that that's a further increment in terms of productization. Remember, I was talking about how the ultimate driver of free cash flow per share increments, which is really what stock prices track over the long term, is basically productization. So if I'm saying we now have these AI models which are going to automate the work of forward deployed engineers, well, you can imagine how much more that is going to productize Palantir software, how much more free cash flow per share the company is positioned to print. So that's another flywheel. It's, again, the autonomous organization concept is not only valid for its customers, but it's also valid for Palantir. So as that flywheel continues spinning for customers and for Palantir, the business is just set to get much bigger, much more profitable, much more efficient. And as I was saying, everything is going to run on a digital twin eventually. Anything that has to do with managing a scarce resource in order to optimize outcomes and actually maximize outcomes. Another thing that is considerably accelerating the business is the fact that Palantir in turn is building vertical instances of its digital twins. So we've all heard about warp speed now. Sorry, warp speed. Just want to make sure that comes properly across the microphone. That's basically a digital twin which is focused on manufacturing. So we heard about Anduril running this thing and increasing the efficiency of, I can't remember what aspect of the manufacturing processes, but basically Warp Speed is making Anduril, the defense company, much more efficient in terms of its manufacturing. And so as Palantir creates vertical instances of their digital twins, the distribution becomes easier too. So that's another flywheel. So then the amount of vertical instances they can build is pretty incredible. So if you think about manufacturing in the abstract, okay, that's one thing. It was working with Warp Speed, but then you can also build sub-verticals within manufacturing. You can do one for manufacturing cars. You can do one for manufacturing missiles. You can do one for manufacturing healthcare equipment. You can do one for manufacturing clothes, etc. So it's really fractal in nature, meaning there's no end to how much you can verticalize the platform. So basically, Palantir, from that perspective, is really a platform from which we will see countless OSs emerge. And if you layer on top of that the idea of productizing and the concept of autonomous organization, well, the potential is just stupid. It's unquantifiable. It applies to the whole of Western civilization. And as I've said many times, Palantir has gone through this process of working out digital twins for 2 decades, so getting all the little details to work, etc. So now competitors have to go through that same process. But as Palantir continues to productize at an exponential rate, they basically have no competition. And so they're positioned to take the whole market, right? And so you see how you have a bunch of exponential flywheels in place. And obviously, traditional analysts do not understand any of this. You never hear anyone talking about any of these aspects. And then you layer on top of that the idea of actually investing for the long term. So it's only really been a few years since many of us got started with Palantir. And the truth is that ideally you want to hold a company for 10, 15, 20 years. That's how you get very rich without doing really much. Although actually there's been a fair bit of work in identifying companies like Palantir, HIMS, etc. early. but it definitely pays off. So if you apply those flywheels for a very long time, then you get something which is very extraordinary. And I say 100x just to kind of quantify it, but it could be, it could be 50x, or it could be 150 or 200, etc. No one really knows, but the truth is much, much bigger than now, much more consequential, really foundational to Western civilization in case of success. Of course, none of this is financial advice. There's risk. It could not work out. But essentially, I'm staking a few $1 million now, betting approximately $2 million on this vision now. And I believe it's going to go on to be $100 million or more over time. So yeah, that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining me, guys. As I was saying, I sound like an idiot many times with my long-term projections, but that's the name of the game. I sounded like an idiot saying that Palantir was the most important company in the West, down at $7. Same with him, same with Spotify initially, AMD and Tesla back in the day, although I didn't actually have a public presence. But this is the name of the game. You have to be contrarian and right. Everyone thinks now is a good idea to trim. I think that this company is only getting started. I think that most likely this investment goes on to be a lot more. So guys, just to cap off, remember that I have 20 discount coupons available for my course. Link in the show's footnotes. They fly in like 5 minutes. They're probably gone by the time you finish watching the video. So enjoy it. You have a 14-day money back, no questions asked guarantee in case you don't like it. And you can go and check out the reviews of customers. They absolutely love the product. The mental framework works. It's the reason I've been outperforming and continue to do so. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me, guys. Take care and see you next time.